Chapter 2. One of the difficulties that students often have is that they try to take on too much when they write. They choose too broad a subject, then are not sure where to start when they find so much information out there on their subjects. Writing and researching is much easier in smaller chunks, which is why subjects need to be limited. If I ask you to think about how much information is out there on World War II, what would you tell me? There are libraries out there that are full of information just on World War II. If you limit it to Hitler and the Nazis, you're still too broad. Limiting the subject to Nazi concentration camps does help, but there's still too much out there to do a successful paper on. One aspect to focus on would be Mengel's tests, specifically at Auschwitz. That can then be narrowed even further to the testing experiments on twins at Auschwitz, then to a specific set of twins. In this case, we could look at Guido and Ina, who were 4-year-old twins who were sewn together to see if they could become Siamese twins. This is a much more manageable subject than World War II in general, and the limiting of the original topic helps students locate appropriate information that they can use to write a solid paper. So what is it about pre-writing? Well, let's go back to what we learned a few slides back in Chapter 1. Purpose, audience, structure, and tone are 4 additional parts of writing that you need to take a good look at before you sit down to compose a piece. You need to decide the reason you are writing, the group that you are writing to, the image you want to present, and the end result. All of these things, when put together, determine the purpose of your paper. What is it that you want your audience to do after they finish reading what you wrote? One other critical instruction is that everything in your paper must directly relate to your thesis. You may have found the most interesting piece of information, or a fact that you're sure no one knows, but if it does not directly support your thesis, you need to leave it out of your paper. We mentioned the word thesis statement earlier in the past lesson. The word thesis and the term thesis statement can be used interchangeably. Here are a few things to keep in mind about it. First, a thesis is the statement of the main part of your essay. Second, a thesis is never your topic, and a topic is never your thesis. Instead, you have to say something about your topic. A topic is a word or phrase, whereas a thesis is more than that. A thesis gives your opinion on your topic. A thesis has to have 3 qualifying parts. First of all, it must be an opinion. It must tell how you feel on the topic. Note that it does not say, "I think that." It also does not say, "I believe." A thesis must be debatable. Someone has to be able to oppose what you're saying. Third, it must be a complete sentence. This is part of what differentiates it from a topic. There are 5 universally recognized pre-writing strategies, though your book only discusses 4 of them. The first is brainstorming. When you brainstorm, you come up with ideas related to a subject in random order, and literally just write them down as they come to you, and in the order in which they come. Listing, the second strategy, is a little more organized. Instead of just writing down the ideas in the order in which they come, you might concentrate on a certain area, or you might write ideas down in columns. Outlining is even more structured, and we will discuss that strategy in its own chapter. Webbing, also known as mapping, is a visual representation of your thoughts. For those of you who are visual learners, you may find that you function best when mapping. Finally, there's making a tree. The tree is a way of seeing things as a simple outline instead of a formal one. You do not have to use all the strategies, but select the one that makes the most sense to you, and take time before you write to explore your subject through using it. Once you have used one or more of the strategies to narrow down your subject, look at what you've written. The thoughts that you have come up with can help you select a topic that is compact enough and organized enough to start composing your paper. Cluster thoughts together and try making a rough outline as you get started. When you do write your first draft, do not worry about your spelling, your punctuation, your grammar, or even your quotes or details. Just focus on getting your ideas down on paper. It's frustrating to have a thought that you want to write about and then finding that you've lost it just before you got started because you were so caught up in either another thought or the specifics of grammar. When you have a draft, make a few corrections and then let someone else read it and make comments. Use these comments to make a revision and thus create a new draft. You don't have to follow every suggestion. So what is it that my final paper should look like? I want you to think about an essay as a house or another building. You must build on a solid foundation. In this case, that would be your thesis. You also need paragraphs as columns to support the structure itself. Note that you do not need a specific number of paragraphs. Some of you have been taught that you need an introductory paragraph, 3 supporting middle paragraphs, and 1 conclusion paragraph. In reality, this is not the case. You just need to make sure that you have enough paragraphs to hold the weight of what you are saying. Finally, you must have a conclusion. If you've ever driven by a building that's been damaged by fire and whose roof is gone, you can see clearly that without the roof, the walls cannot hold up the structure on their own. Instead, they fall in and you're left with nothing. It's the same way with a piece of writing. All 3 elements work together to hold your structure together. You cannot have a weakness in one part without its affecting all of them. Since we're in the age of technology, and since this course requires your documents to be word processed, we should take a minute or two to address writing with a computer. If you've not taken a computer course or otherwise have gained knowledge about the functions that your word processing program has, you should find time to do so. Learning the shortcuts, such as using the control keys to move passages, or using spacing shortcuts to double space and indent your paragraphs, will become helpful to you. Beware of moving too fast, though, and deleting or moving text. You may find that it was better the way you originally had it, but you cannot figure out how that was. Saving and printing your work is crucial. How many of us have had our computers crash on us, or we've not saved a document, only to find that we needed it later? I highly encourage you to both print and save your documents. This gives you 2 copies of it that you can find. You may even consider emailing a copy of it to yourself, so that you can access it anywhere you get internet access. As another point, I should not have to say this, but make sure that you take care of your disks. Many of us are using jump drives or thumb drives to keep our work on. While these are often more convenient, they're also more easily forgotten or lost. Be careful and mindful of what you do with your data storage devices. There are more things to worry about than just magnets and heat. Word processing programs are equipped with aids for us to use to make sure that we have spelled our words correctly and that our grammar is properly used. While these are great tools, we still have to be the ones who make the final decision of what's right. Homophones like to, T-O-O, to, T-W-O, and to, T-O, or the words there, T-H-E-R-E, T-H-E-I-R, and T-H-E-R-E are often misspelled and sometimes not caught by these tools. Finally, make sure that in this class you use MLA, or Modern Language Association, format for your documentation. These are guidelines that have been standardized, and they must be followed correctly in order to receive credit for your work. They're very specific details, and winging it just doesn't work. Use your textbook as a reference.